Hi there, Thak from Thak Ironworks. We're going to do something a little bit different today in our video. This is a DIY video for people who want to make their own brass bikini top. Recently I've been doing a fair bit of that. It's kind of the way my business has worked out for the last few months. Done a couple of Xena replica suits, and I've also a couple years back did a Wonder Woman breastplate and other accoutrement for a Wonder Woman outfit. So I do the female armor thing once in a while, and as I've gotten into it, I thought this might be kind of a cool opportunity to use a design that would be generic enough that people could make their own kit. So what I went and did was design a motif and took it to my laser cutter and had pieces cut out of brass. And so we're gonna make a piece like this and then transform it into an actual bra cup. So this is the kit which I will be selling, and it contains everything you need to put this together. So what you've got is two of the brass pieces which I have annealed. Annealing, technical term. Basically, I just need to heat up the piece to bring it up to critical temperature, and this softens the metal. Brass is a metal that work hardens as you work it, and it needs to be annealed from time to time. I've got these annealed, so you should be able to do all of your shaping before this thing work hardens and freezes into position. I've got all the other components here, and we'll address these as we get into the project. So this is a replica of the original Xena suit done in real copper. And this is another Xena outfit. Apparently, I don't know when, later seasons anyway, she had this more kind of, it was a take on a samurai armor. And this was components for that. And again, a replica that I was doing for a reenactor from Texas. So this is in brass. Okay, so tools required for this. I tried to strip this down to have the most basic tooling depending on what your situation out there is. So what you will need is a sandbag, and this one was a very quick one made out of a piece of denim, just a pant leg, and basically just zip tied shut with some sand in it. What could be simpler? In addition to that, you will need some sort of block of wood. I just grabbed this one off my drill press. I actually want something with some depressions in it that I can kind of dish into. So just any old chunk of wood, a 2x4 would be fine as well. Main one that you're gonna need is a drill of some sort. So probably a cordless drill is the way of what you're gonna be using. And on that, you will need a 3/16 drill bit for drilling steel. We're actually drilling brass, so it'll drill through quite easily. In addition to that, you need a medium-sized ball peen hammer. Ball peen meaning it has a ball for the peen of it, and also a flat surface. We'll be using both sides of that. So just a medium-sized hammer. I'm not even sure how much this weighs, about a pound maybe, but not the smallest one out there, certainly not the biggest one, somewhere in the middle. I struggled to try to come up with a workable ball stake, not something that the average household would have. And what I finally settled on was a trailer hitch ball. These are quite inexpensive. You can get these for about, I don't know, 15 bucks. I'm speaking Canadian here in dollars. And a lot of people will actually have them on the back of their vehicle. And you could incidentally work off the back of your vehicle. That would be a sufficient vise to hold that and use this ball. We're just gonna put mine into the vise there. It's -10 Celsius outside, so not real comfortable. I don't really want to be crouching at the back of my vehicle working off of that. We'll use this as a simulation of what you could be doing. Other than that, the only other thing would be a bowl of some sort to work your leather into if you're doing leather, and there's different options on that as well. And then, I don't know, Sharpie, scissors, stuff like that. So let's begin. All right, so for the leather portion, we take a piece of leather, which is, forgive me, I don't understand ounces on leather. I'm not up to date on that. This is a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe 3/16 of an inch thick. So fairly heavy leather. I call it strap leather for armoring. I use it for, it's heavy enough to use straps. So a fairly heavy leather, veg tanned, and I've been soaking this for about half an hour. And basically I cut out a piece that is slightly larger than my shape. Now what we need to do is sculpt this metal, or sculpt this leather, and the way we're going to do that is into a bowl. You can also do this over a ball where you're bending over the ball, but I find it works better going into something. I happen to have this bowl which is a perfect hemisphere, but you can use any bowl that has a nice curvature to it. It could be porcelain, doesn't have to be steel. Should be something rigid though. Like a light plastic bowl probably is not going to cut it. So I'm just going to begin now, and basically I'm just pushing the leather into the form, and what you're going to see is giant wrinkles forming, and you've got to start right away chasing those guys out. So this is a slow massage process. You have to push it down and get rid of all the big wrinkles as they form, pulling it and pushing it and just generally working it in there. When you first start, this feels like it's not going to happen, it's not working, but you'll find that the fibers, as you start massaging them into place, will start conforming to the hemisphere shape. Okay, so I'm about, I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes into this process of massaging it in there, and it more or less got the shape. There are a couple wrinkles there that will come out when we pull this thing out. This shape, incidentally, is a little smaller than what the final shape is meant to be, which is fine. I can just pull this out for a second to show you. It's actually going to be a little bit like that, so we can pull some of those wrinkles out. But now we let that dry out, and we want to get this dried out for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours until it starts stiffening up somewhat, but it's still pliable. So let's move on to other parts of the project. Okay, so if your brass work hardens too much during the process and you find it's just not moving anymore, and it's quite easy to do that. It just takes a little bit of hammering on the brass and it'll start stiffening up and not really wanting to dish out. So if you're trying to get your depth and you're realizing that it's not there, but it just seems to be getting tinny or stiff, then you might have to anneal it. And to do that, I wish you could do it in your oven, but the brass you need to get up about to 700 degrees, a little hotter than most ovens are able to do. But what you can do is just take a little propane torch here. These things you can get at the hardware store. They're quite inexpensive and easy to use, and I'm just going to show you how to heat it up with that. Ooh, there's no propane in here. So basically, I've just got it sitting on a brick here, just something that will insulate it. You don't want to do it on wood, obviously. And you just want to slowly work it over the area until you see it starting to turn orange. You should be able to see that color. This would actually work better in a dimmer room. We've got a little too much lighting right here, but so when I see that it comes up to an orange, then I just move on and just slowly start working my way around the entire piece. So, not much more I can say to that. Just look for that orange color. Once you actually see that it's orange, then you can move on and just make sure you get the entire piece done this way. And then just let it cool off. By the time you get to the far end, your starting end will probably be more or less cool anyway. And then you should be able to continue on. So that is annealing. All right, we begin. So there's a right and a left, and I always like to idiot-proof this right off the bat because it's so easy to make two rights and kind of shoot yourself in the foot. So I'm just going to start dishing the one like that and the other like that. Now I know I've got my right and left started, so crisis will be averted when I move to the next one. Now, we're just going to get onto the sandbag here, and I'm just going to start gently with the ball hammering into the sandbag. I typically, when I'm doing this sort of thing, I have a lead shot bag, so a different material inside, and also leather, so I'm not getting this dust that the sandbag lets off. If you're doing this and you've got a dusty sandbag like this, you might want to wear a mask. As you're dishing this in, you want to keep things balanced out. You'll notice as distortions happen, as soon as you get a big wrinkle like that, you should chase that down and then move on to the next biggest wrinkle. And that's generally keep working in a spiral sort of fashion. I'm hitting a little harder now that I've got the bowl shape actually happening. All right, so I've got quite a bit of dishing in there. Right now, I want to take out some of these wrinkles. The sandbag is too much give. So at this point, I want to use wood, and by using this chewed up chunk of wood, it's got little depressions in it, and that's quite nice to actually work into. If you've got a fresh piece of 2x4 or whatever, what you could do is actually just take your drill and just kind of carve out roughly a depression. And you can create a little bowl. So what I'm trying to do is just even out all the big wrinkles, but always trying to move it deeper. I don't want it to flatten out again. You don't want to undo the work that you've just done. And realize that, as I said earlier, that the brass work hardens. So you've only got a limited amount of time working on this before it's going to start stiffening up, and it's really not going to want to move for you anymore. So it's kind of important to achieve your shape as quickly or with the least number of hammer blows possible. I'm now going back to the bag and doing a second pass. I want to get some more depth there. I've got a good curvature, but not deep enough. I would like a tighter ball, if you will. All right, I might be close to the right shape now. What I'm going to do is grab a mannequin. Okay, since I myself am not sporting a pair of breasts, I'm going to have to use a artificial set here and just work with that. So this is bigger than that, but bigger than the breast in question, but you get the right shape. This is actually conforming to the shape that we need to do here. This top part can pull out a little bit, but we're basically there. So I've got enough depth in there, and I'm ready to go on to the planishing step to smooth everything out here and put all the nice hammer faceting in. Before I do that though, I would suggest that you go to your second one and get it to the same level before moving on. Okay, so I've got my piece dished out. Now what I want to do is planish it, which means putting hundreds of overlapping hammer blows that make a nice faceted finish and catch the light. It's just a very attractive looking finish. So I'm just going to use the flat on this and then getting onto the curvature of the ball, and then just very many small hammer blows. And I'm just basically tracing my way around the perimeter. You could do this step with the peen, which would make for a more dramatic finish, but I think you might end up, it's very problematic. You could start undoing this shape and it might be more trouble than it's worth. With the curvature of this, the flat actually, it makes a very nice facet. So I would stick with a flat faceting or planishing. All right, I got both my cups planished, and now we're ready to drill some holes for where they're going to be attached. So typically I have this scoop here at the top, and you can change the orientation to whatever you want. I like the way it sits like that, so I'm going to put, for a strap coming down here, I will put a hole right there. Then to tie these together in the middle here, I'm going to come across, I'll put a hole there, and then on the outside of the boob there is going to be one coming across, and let's try putting that one there, 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 and there. Once you've got the holes on the one side, I just get it mating up like this, and then just use that as your guide. Got my drill, 3/16 drill bit, and onto the mark. You could use the center punch mark here if you want to be more certain. I'm fairly cavalier about the way I drill holes in brass. Straight through into the block. All right, so these 3 holes will be our attachment points. I also find we need a couple more holes to hold the leather in place. So I'm just going to eyeball and space in between where they should end up. You can measure and do it however you want. This area here is quite a little bit longer, so I think what I'll do is just that. More or less evenly spaced out, and then perhaps also I will put one up here. Now I'm going to mark out our fastening holes just so we don't get them mixed up during our process of attaching the D-rings. You'll see in a minute. Okay, so I've got the brass is shaped and planished, and my leather, which is still quite moist, it's been in there for a few hours, but it's nice and pliable. This is actually a good thing. So now what I'm ready to do is put these 2 pieces together. So you can see this cup is a little bit smaller, the leather, but it will just kind of flex into place. The beauty of it still being somewhat damp. So I'm going to start just kind of stretching it out to fit. Once I've got that, then I position it on there. I want to get some holes drilled. So I'm going to get it right in position here and hit my wood block here to grab it and drill through the wet leather. Just run it through a couple times. Sometimes the hole tends to close up a little bit. Now we're going to take the nuts and bolts that I include with my kit. These nuts and bolts are just a temporary fastener to allow you to assemble it and disassemble it a few times to get everything fitted in position. So you'll find that's quite a nice way to work. So now I'm going to get the leather in and just stretch it into position. So I'm going to jump to go one hole in there and get this one drilled out. Okay, so I've got everything bolted in nice and tight there, and I'm able to kind of shove the leather into position. Now I'm going to take a ballpoint pen and trace around the perimeter. Like so. Now unbolt the whole thing. Take it apart. All right, so you're gonna need a sturdy pair of scissors for this. I don't think dollar store scissors are gonna be up to the challenge. It is wet, so it shouldn't be too bad, but you want something that can stand up to cutting through a pretty tough leather here. Something like that. Now you've got a pretty jaggy edge here, and what you could do is get some sandpaper and kind of clean that up. And if you've got any actual leatherworking skills, you might want to take, wet the edge and take some sort of smooth, hard object, like a hammer handle even, would work like that. And just kind of smooth out that edge. So you can make it quite nice if you want. I'm not gonna bother for purposes of this. It's just gonna leave the edge a little bit frayed, but I don't think it's gonna be a deal breaker. Okay, so I'm gonna get the other piece up to this, and then we are going to stain the leather. Okay, so I'm going to now stain the leather. I've done a test piece earlier, and this isn't completely finished. This will be much shinier and brassier looking, but I'm just looking at it as far as the contrast, pretty subtle one. That should work okay. You can do whatever background color you want, and just for a drastic comparison, if you did something, you could do something like red against the brass, which is really cool contrast, quite stark and quite eye-catching. So whatever you want. I'm not here to tell you what to do. But for me, I'm just going to do just standard, regular, dark brown. Pour a little stain out here. And brush it on. And if you're not a slob like me, you might want to wear gloves because this will stain your hand for a day or two. Also do the edges. A leave the inside, that I'll probably line with a piece of felt or something nice and soft. Okay, we'll let those dry for an hour or so. In the meantime, I'm going to work on these. All right, so now we're gonna finish the brass. I am just sharpening in to alert myself to the holes that are gonna have the actual D-ring tabs on it there, because I'll be now working on the front there. I should have did that on the inside to begin with. Now, oftentimes with brass, what I will do is put a weak acid solution on, usually gun blue. I also use something called black patina, which is used in the stained glass industry. There are other chemicals out there that are commercially available that you can use as well. This actually has pretty good coloring from the annealing stage, and I think what I'm going to do is just go straight to steel wool and try to pull it up and see what I get with the facets of the planishing in there. So I'm going to take some coarse steel wool and just see what happens. Incidentally, while you're doing this, you probably want to be wearing a mask. I find that copper dust or copper-based alloys like brass, that dust can be fairly irritating in the nostrils. Pretty toxic in large levels. In a small dose like this, not really toxic, but still an irritant. So might be more comfortable to wear a dust mask as you're doing something like this. Okay, moment of truth, final assembly. So we got our pieces here. I'm checking to see which one has a tab on it, and I'm going to use that one. So I will start with a D-ring tab. So I'm going to set that in with the little bulge going up. And now I've got my flathead aluminum rivets, which are included with your kit. And that will go with the head to the inside. Once you've got it through all the holes there, get it onto the ball. And now I just gently tap on either side with the hammer to seat everything tightly. And then I come in with the flat of the hammer and then switch to the peen of the hammer to make a nice faceted head. Tightening that down there. So now we've got that in place. Very nice. Next one, I'm going to check. This one has a tab on. Or D-ring, I should call it, I guess. In position, tap it down, and upset the rivets. Okay, and then we repeat that step many times. So I'll put the last D-ring in this one. The D-ring itself goes into its tab there, and then you just pinch that shut. I just check to see here, that is my last placement for that. Grab my flathead rivet. Go through the tab, through the leather. Sometimes it's a little hard to push it through there. And then line it up to get through the brass itself. Once you've got everything in place, you can just set that head on your ball and then tap it down. And you can see that there is an 1/8 of an inch or 3/16 of an inch sticking up above, and that's what you want to make sure you don't have a gap in between there. And now I can hit and then go in with the ball peen after I've got a couple of blows with the flat. And here we are, the finished product. So I've got everything riveted together. I just put some leather lacing on here and just put it together that I could put it on the model or mannequin here. Doesn't look as good on a inanimate object like this, so I'm going to troll around on my Instagram account and see if I can find a subscriber that might be up to modeling this. So hopefully by the time you see this video, that will actually be the thumbnail for this, and we'll get some shots of her. So just to recap the process here, hopefully I'm hoping that it is the DIY thing for beginners, that you can do this without a whole lot of previous knowledge in this, but it's something that might be challenging and fun if you're into cosplay or some sort of dance troupe or something like that. Keep in mind that I just did this in one example of how it can be done. The brass can be polished to a high polish. You could do different finishes on that. You could also add rivets, and you could put little studs and bling and what have you, different fabrics, different colors on there, different things with lacing. Also, you don't even have to do the leather inside there. You could do a fabric and have that riveted, sewn in. You could sew it in with many little holes, and the sky's the limit. Really, you figure it out. Different ways to go about this. Incidentally, if you are using this for like something like, say, belly dancing, where you're going to be moving around a lot, you might prefer to actually build this onto an existing bra or something like that stays where you need it to stay, and actually just sew it in or rivet it onto that. But again, that's up to you. I'm curious to see what people come up with for this, and I'd love to see photos of the finished product. Check out in the description below. There should be details on how to get yourself a hands on to one of our kits here, what's all included, how much it costs, all that stuff, how you can get that. I can't think of anything else at this point, but good luck. See you in the future. Back out.